What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the After You cast. Now, before we jump into the conversation, some quick shout outs. I was able to jump on an amazing conversation yesterday with a good friend of mine that I went to school with, Harris. So shout out to you, brother. He actually is running his own podcast now called Unpopular Theory. And we had a great discussion talking about some unpopular trends and talking points in society that sometimes get swept under the carpet, or we kind of gloss over them, or the importance of them, so it's a great discussion highlighting some of those things. And yeah, big shout out to you, man, for getting that platform off the ground. I know firsthand how difficult it can be, launching your own podcast and, staying true to it and trying to find unique ways to keep creating content. So shout out to you guys. Go check out his platform and go give him a follow and a subscribe. Also, I want to give a huge shout out, as always, to all of the members who have come on to the podcast and who have come on, and the guests, and also the individuals who have helped me to get some of the guests, because as I've said before, a lot of the times when you're creating content, you usually have to utilize the individuals that you know in your close circle, especially when you're getting started. So yeah, big shout out to all the individuals who've given me your time, shared your time to come on and share part of your story. Yeah, I'll continue to make this platform available for those kinds of individuals. I think it's important that we share stories from the horse's mouth, from the individual themselves, as opposed to having a third party or a proxy. It's great to always hear those first-hand accounts, and I always learn so much when a new person comes on. This season, this is actually going to be the final episode of the season, which will be episode 10. And I always do, as everybody knows, a solo episode. So this is the solo episode, and I wanted to wait until the end, but best believe for season 4 we're going to be making some improvements, let's say. But at the end of the day, it takes time to develop and get to that point where you've earned that right. So I'm very proud personally that I was able to kind of get this off the ground individually by myself, using just basic equipment and some of the skills that I've gathered along my way. So yeah, now I'm at this point where I've got interest from somebody to come on board and handle the audio. Is just going to make so much more of an improvement for you guys out there, and especially for the audio listeners as well. I'm always trying to make it interesting and also still make it an in-depth conversation, so that if you listen along on audio only, you also get a good feel of the conversation, So yeah, big shout out to everyone who's locked in and supporting, as always. You know how it goes. And we're just going to keep this party going. So for today, I really want to talk about the 8 core principles that I live by. Also connecting that to how important it can be for when you work in communities, or even like small community groups and things like that. Also applies to business as well. You can take these principles into life, into whatever endeavor that you're working on and you're striving towards. I think that could be useful to you too. Another little interesting thing, I don't know if people actually know, I'm sure you do, but 8 is the first number that the digit actually has a continuous shape. So if you look through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, none of them are complete shapes. They're all just lines that connect. Whereas when you get to the number 8, it's the first continuous shape. And then of course, if you turn it on its side, it actually is basically the infinity symbol, which also makes a lot of sense for the continuous element of the shape. So yeah, just a little small fun fact, part of the reason why the number 8 has always just been special. Also, shout out to Ian Wright, because I remember seeing him back in those hybrid days wearing that number 8 with the collars on it. All my OG Arsenal fans know what I'm talking about, that JVC, that Sega. So yeah, that's another little reason. But anyway, getting into the topic. The first principle is integrity. Now, integrity is something that I think is lacking in society today, but it's very difficult to kind of isolate where exactly that comes from, if that makes sense. So for me, integrity is essentially staying true to things, staying true to the core of what you do. Integrity is one of those things that I think speaks volumes about the kind of work that you do, but also the kind of person that you are. I don't think that it is something that can be achieved from short-term conversation. I think it's more of a long-term investment. It's something that people will eventually see and be able to experience through you when they can see the projects that you do, ultimately. So having the integrity to complete tasks, having the integrity to see through projects that you join, having the integrity to get the work done when necessary. Integrity in today's society is lacking because there are so many options. There's so much maneuverability, so much adaptability, and you don't want to get caught stuck in one lane when another one that you could have been on is flourishing. So I can understand where the disconnect can be for a lot of people trying to find and develop that integrity in their life. But I think it also comes back to taking a back step and also realizing that it takes time to develop your craft. It takes time to develop anything that you create. So there will be an element of you having to be disciplined and see things through for a long period of time. That's when I think integrity comes in, and it can be used in a positive way. I've suffered with this in my early years of not necessarily sticking to one task, and that's obviously through that creative flow, that creative freedom that you have. But I think you have to get to a point where you kind of focus that energy towards a specific area so that, you know, you can see some of the gains. And it's not a case of you have to stick in it forever, because nothing is permanent. But what it does do is it enables you to understand where you may be succeeding and where you may be going wrong. Number 2, commitment. This is a massive one and a big one that a lot of people suffer with. I mean, even on the conversation I just had with Harris yesterday on Unpopular Theory, we was discussing and talking a little bit about how commitment has become so much harder to find and also to stick with, especially in forms of relationships, when we're discussing relationships and, you know, marriages, that sort of thing. Commitment is harder now just in general because of the abundance of options that we have presented in front of us on a daily basis. You know, that's where you see so many productivity apps and utilization apps that are trying to take your calendar and, you know, break it up for you, you know, essentially provide that productivity time and give it back to you, calculate how much time you use in screen time, all of these different things. I think it's harder to commit to one thing when you know you have so many different choices. I kind of look at it like a menu. Like if you walk into a restaurant and the menu that you open up has 5 pages and almost 100 different options, it's going to be difficult and you might need a little bit more time to decide what you want to eat. Whereas if you walk into a fine dining restaurant, the menus are very small. You usually only get either what the chef has told you you're going to get, or a small selection, maybe no more than about 10 items, but those items will be of high quality. And of course, the experience, how you curate the environment, all of that matters. But ultimately, you're paying for the experience, not just the food. Whereas when you go to, let's say, a fast food restaurant, there may be lists and pages of what you can buy, but the quality is not necessarily there. The experience isn't there. The table service, the chef putting their personal touch on things. So that's essentially what we end up paying for. But I think when it comes to commitment, it's just harder because we essentially just have massive menus. Everyone has a 10-page menu of things that they can do on a daily basis. So it's harder to isolate, okay, what is the few things I actually want? What's my appetizer? What's going to be my main meal? And do I want dessert? So I think that's kind of what it is when it comes to commitment. But I think if you can separate away from the distractions and try to minimize, focus in on things and the skills that you actually have, focus in on the people that you actually know, and target your energy towards that, I think that you'll find a lot more success. And then again, you'll be able to, very similarly with the integrity, sticking at it, being committed to it, now you'll be able to isolate and see, okay, this is what I'm good at, this is what I need to hold back on, and this is what I need to improve. Number 3, faith. Now, this could be considered a little bit of a controversial one in today's society, because as we know, religion isn't what it once was. And I think a lot of the information that we have out now is there scientifically, mathematically, to contest and challenge things that we once thought were, or we didn't have necessary answers for. So I think that faith is something that is very powerful and it lies within. You kind of either have it or you don't, but it can be developed. And I've always been that faithful kind of individual. I always kind of visualize and picture and imagine what things will look like if I put this work in, if I create this, if I make this connection happen. So I don't think it's just linked solely to being religious. I think it is much more of an internal feeling, an internal characteristic or a trait that it just exudes from you. When you meet people, you're able to understand them, relate to them, have a little bit of humility for what they may be going through. And that's where I think in my particular case, I can't speak for anyone else, but faith has been massive for me. I've obviously grown up in a Christian household, Caribbean families. Obviously, as we know, most of us typically are Christian, even though in current times, should I say, we've had lots of different issues trying to debunk faith and trying to, is God real and all of these different factors, because it isn't something that's tangible. It isn't something that you can see, touch, or even hear, except for the individuals. But I think it's more about how you carry yourself. For me, I take the essences of faith I take the most are the humility, the patience, the will and desire, just having that confidence that good can come from situations. It kind of comes down to that conversation of, are you more optimistic? Are you more pessimistic? Are you more realistic? Whatever the category is, I think that you can relate to people, you can understand and hear where they come from, and then kind of utilize your personal faith system, to connect with people and inspire people as well. So I don't think it necessarily has to be attached to religion, even though it kind of has been. But wherever you stand on the situation or wherever your thoughts are, I definitely think faith is something that will help you get through when times are tough, when you don't think that there are any answers, or when you're potentially struggling. It's resulting back to the things that you may have already done, or the connections of people you've already made, I think will, add up in the future. Number 4, resilience. Now, this one can kind of be linked a little bit with integrity because, whereas I see the difference would be is that integrity is more staying true to something, staying focused on that for a period of time, and unwillingness to give up, an unshakable mentality where you stick to it regardless of outcome. Of course, then there's a little bit of nuance in there because you want to be doing things that will push you in the right direction. No one wants to be doing things that are going to have a negative result at the end of it. We all want to be moving forward, of course. But the resilience, I think, is dealing with a constant barrage, let's call it, or just a constant frustration of the things that you're trying to get to and the places you're going to get to, or the difficulty of how hard it is to get there. That's where I think being resilient comes in. It's almost like an armor that you build up. And I think that armor can be built up. This is why I say I think it's linked to integrity. From being an integral person, from being committed, then you can get to a point where you become more resilient. And now you're prepared, and you go out there and your armor is prepared to deal with, the potential threats or the issues or the problems that you're going to encounter out in the real world. So being resilient, I think, is a fantastic thing to develop. I think it takes time, but I think when you do develop good resilience, you're going to be more respected in your field or whatever it is that you do, or even just as an individual, because people can see that, all right, one bad situation isn't going to ruin this person's life. They're still going to keep fighting, they're still going to push, and they're going to keep moving forward. And that's the kind of people that you really want to work with, because not every day is going to be a good one. Number 5, professionalism. This is something that, again, I think kind of speaks for you. I think the way that you carry yourself, the way that you dress, the way that you maintain your discipline, I think that these things speak for themselves. I think you can work towards being more professional in the work that you put out, the image that you sell. However, I think when you peel back that layer, real professionalism exists without the image. And what do I mean by that? So essentially, you could have a fantastic website. You could have an amazing Instagram. You could have nice vehicles. You go on fancy trips. You can have all of the things that look like you are a professional. However, from my experience, working in around the sporting side of things from football, I know from firsthand experience that being professional isn't just about the image. In fact, the majority of the work you develop to become a professional is unseen. It's unheard. No one really knows what you get up to in those quiet times to be able to develop that professionalism. So I think that it's something that once you put that work in and you work on yourself and you develop yourself to be the person you want to be, that professionalism will speak for itself. And of course, you still do need those things that qualify your professionalism, aka your image, how you present yourself, how you conduct yourself, how you communicate with people and you communicate your ideas. All of that comes into one package, and I think it creates the professional image that you eventually want. Style. I like this one particularly because it's unique to each individual, and I've met so many people from working as a photographer in different elements of fashion, architecture, loads of different art forms. Everyone has a unique style, and it's not necessarily just linked to the way that you dress. I think style is also the personality and character you have. So the kind of music that you like to listen to will form your opinions and your mindset. The kind of podcasts that you listen to will give you information that potentially you may lead to following down that path. Whereas overall, your style, I think it is just who you are. The way that you wear things, the way that you say things, the tone of your voice, your mannerisms, all of these things, again, they speak for you. So having a personal style, I think, is the best way to go. Trying to look at what others do, you may be able to take certain pieces of it. Like, okay, I like the way that person dresses. Okay, I like the way that person does business. I like that person's vehicle. I like whatever. It can be material as an item. It doesn't have to be only things that have, depth and value. I think it can also be attached to things that essentially speak for who you are. So style is one of those things that is personal to you. It takes time, it takes years to develop what your personal style actually is, or even to know what your style actually might be. My style is a lot more minimalistic. I have a very clean and centered approach to a lot of the work. For example, when you look at my photography, a lot of my portraits are very center focused, and then with the backgrounds and the lighting, I try to keep as clean and as clear as possible to avoid distraction, because my whole focus with taking photographs, especially of people, is to avoid distraction, to focus on the subject matter, whether that's the individual, whether that's the product being sold. I like to have a centered approach, and I have a very balanced approach to the kind of work that I like to promote. And that's just from a visual side of things, but it also reflects and it transfers onto other areas of your life. For example, with my fashion style, particularly, I don't really like a lot of graphic and loud prints and all of these different things when it comes to the clothes that I wear. I mean, one side of that could be maturity. You tend to find a lot of men wear plain, simple things, but I'm much more about the timeless element of fashion. I'd much rather have one item that I wear consistently, as opposed to consistently buying new things that have less value, or I'm just picking them up because it's just another item I can add to my wardrobe. I think it's much more interesting to find what it is in terms of what style or item or thing that you like, and then make it work for you, as opposed to looking outside and saying, okay, cool, I like what he got, let me try and get what he's got, or I like what she's wearing, let me wear what she's wearing. I think it's much better for your own mental health when you're able to develop what your own personal style is and then feel good about it. Number 7, mindfulness. This is something that I've actually developed over the last couple of years, more so than in my earlier 20s. As everybody knows, in your early 20s, you're out there, you're learning, you're outside, you're trying to figure out what life's all about. But then you get to a point where you start questioning your interactions, you start questioning the friendships, groups that you have, the people that you do business with, all of these things. And I think being mindful of other people's situations is very important, especially if you're trying to do business with them. You need to know where they're at in life. You need to know what they're trying to achieve, what are their goals, so that you can find a way for either you to work together or for you to be able to make something that is worth them purchasing. Myself being a creative, but also providing a service, it's very important that I have the right kind of mood and mentality when you meet me. A lot of the times people always say like, oh, like you basically exactly are like you are in your videos and your podcasts and stuff. And it's like, because I try to be congruent, I try to be as to the point and as focused, and basically I am who I am regardless of scenario. It's important, of course, when you're in different rooms to understand the temperature, so you know when and where to speak. However, I think it's important to maintain your personality as well. So as long as you're doing that in a respectful manner, then there shouldn't be an issue with you showcasing who you are. Also, by doing that, you're going to be able to find and meet the kind of people that actually resonate with the same kind of thought patterns and the strategies that you have, as opposed to beating your head against the wall, trying to get certain people to buy into your concepts or to just buy your product. So when it comes to, let's say, selling a service, selling a product, you need to know, obviously, your target audience. You need to know your market. You need to know the industry. But what I think a lot of businesses and brands struggle with, from what I've seen, is injecting personality into it. It's basically almost having an energy that speaks volumes of itself without you having to really say anything. So all of these things that we've talked about, they do cross-contaminate, they cross over, they connect. But I think the combination of them all together is what separates and creates this holistic approach to who you are. So for mindfulness, it's essentially paying attention, paying respect, being humble, being willing to listen, and appreciating that not everyone comes packaged the same, but we can work together. The final one, creativity. Now, of course, it kind of speaks for itself. Me being a creative is definitely something that I wouldn't call necessarily a principle, but it's more of a trait. I think that creativity is who you are. Again, it's not necessarily the things that you create. Not confusing creativity with art, because a lot of the time in society we kind of do that. We think art is creativity when art is the thing that you create, it's the medium, it's the subject matter that you're creating and then promoting that. Whereas I think creativity is utilizing and understanding concepts in order to create solutions, or really to build and establish something new. With creativity, as you can see in today's society, a lot of people are doing creative content. So you've got a lot of content creators online. But what you don't necessarily know is that not every one of them actually creates the content. And I think that is it's a grey area in the content creation space, because if you haven't learnt those skills, it means that you need to promote and utilize other people, which is fine. But where I kind of get frustrated sometimes, or I have been in the past, is creditation. I believe that if you create something, there should be credit. Whereas a lot of the time when young creatives come into the market, they're not necessarily armed with the logistical understanding and the mathematical approach and the science behind it. It's much more of a feeling and an energy they're trying to encapsulate to be sellable. Now, that's where you meet the sharks. That's where you meet the people in the world ready to come and absorb that and take it to somewhere else. So for me, all of these other factors built and have built me personally to become the creative that I am today. So I don't just go out and try to create things. I try to utilize and look at the market, look at my friendship circles, look at my community, look at what I've already done, look at my skill sets, and then compile all of this information together to be able to make the most effective plan. And for me, that has been podcasting, that has been photography, working on film sets, and collaborating with people. I realize and have realized that my main power, my main strength is communication and being able to bridge gaps. Now that I know that, it's imperative and it's important that I utilize all of these strategies to become better, to grow, to develop, so that I can get better at them. So hopefully anyone out there who's trying to develop themselves as well, whether they're on the content creation side of things, whether they're just a creative or an artist or running a creative business, I think that all of these principles work together in order to, establish you as an individual and also create an identity that separates you in the market. Quick review. We've got integrity, commitment, faith, resilience, professionalism, style, mindfulness, and creativity. Those are the 8 core principles that I like to live by, or I live by, should I say, and have turned me and created the individual that you see today. So I hope that any of these principles other people out there can resonate with, or maybe just attach to what they're already doing and keep pushing. There's so much push online for viral content, and I think that the real things in society that actually move people, actually create change, actually inspire, they come from small places, they come from small communities, they come from small businesses. So I never try to stray too far away from basically understanding that the everyday person that you see on the street who is selling you a cup of coffee or stamping your ticket at the train station or just providing any base level service, those are the individuals who make up our society, as opposed to looking online on Instagram and seeing these profiled individuals who you have no connection to, you have no understanding of what they're actually doing or how they're actually achieving it, but we become enamored by them. And then people in our local communities and our local circles, they're almost invisible. We tend to flock and absorb information that comes from abroad, that comes from far places. Meanwhile, there's people right next to us that have just as interesting of a project or a business idea or a venture, but it doesn't get as much traction. So I think there's a challenge in there for us as people to be able to look more inward, look more close around your local communities, as opposed to worrying about things that are happening thousands of miles away. And, hopefully one of these 8 principles could potentially help you, or maybe you're already further down the line. And if so, maybe I need to sit down and have a conversation with you, so see what I can learn. But yeah, guys, I hope, as I said, one of these 8 core principles resonates with you. And as I said, all of this for me is a great way to approach community-based work, community-led projects, because you come to the table with something to offer. You come to the table with a listening ear. You come to the table with patience and understanding. And then you come to the table ready to deal with the potential hurdles or adversity you might meet in order to raise something off of the ground. I hope whoever's out there listening was able to take something away. As I said, big shout out to everyone who locks in and continues to lock into the content, and I really appreciate you guys. I'm always trying to bring unique people onto the platform, as you know, and keep developing and keep evolving and keep growing. And it takes time. So anyone out there who's doing things and it's maybe not moving as quickly as you'd like it to, try not to stress as much, because it does take a long time to actually develop these links and actually see some tangible value from it. So yeah, never get too down on yourself. But yeah, beautiful people, that is pretty much a wrap on the season. And as I said, season 4 is looking like it's going to be an exciting one. As I said, going to be making some big improvements in the audio side of things. Obviously visually, as me being a visual artist, I'm always trying to tweak and adjust and think about cameras and all these different things. So all within good time, we get to where we need to get to, but it wouldn't happen without some of you wonderful people coming and showing love on the platform and just resharing, reposting and showing love when you get the time to. So yeah, I will be doing a lot more of these short form content videos moving forward, just to be able to get some more usable content around people. Obviously my podcasts tend to be a little bit longer, more in depth. Not everyone always has the time for that. So I have had a few requests from people to do some more short form stuff, more reaction based things. So yeah, stay tuned for more of these kind of short conversations. And yeah, if you have any main talking points, hit me up in the comments, or shout me on Instagram. I'm always willing to listen to new concepts. And yeah, I try to veer as much as possible from trends and viral type content, because it comes and it goes, and then you've got nothing to refer to after the fact. I'd much rather do something meaningful that has an impact that people can come back to and continue to learn from. Amazing people, stay tuned, because I'm going to take a short little break, and then season 4 will be starting very soon. But in between that, I'm working on some really cool ventures behind the scenes, which I think is really going to support and help a lot of people to shorten that learning curve so that they can get to where they want to a little bit quicker, because we have so much information out here now. And I think it's now about piecing that information with good people and then going off into the world and building and creating. Like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Appreciate you guys. That's a wrap on season 3, and I look forward to seeing you wonderful people in season 4. I hope everyone's blessed, stays blessed, and continues to stay blessed. And as I said, I'm going to keep this ball moving, keep this party going. Until next season, I'll see you beautiful people soon. Peace and love. Cover your 6.